They fired me Friday at 5 p.m. By Monday, their entire system was dead. No shouting, no door slamming. I just let them drive straight into the wall after they'd cut their own brake lines. 7 years I'd kept their infrastructure breathing. 7 years of midnight patches, emergency fixes, and systems held together with my expertise and their prayers. Then the new CEO walked in with his buzzwords and his vision, looked at my department, and decided we were legacy overhead. He thought I was replaceable. Monday morning, he learned otherwise. My name is Lena Cooper. And for 7 years, I was the one who kept Northbridge data systems from burning to the ground. 35 years old, no social media presence, no LinkedIn endorsements for synergy or thought leadership. Just me, my terminal, and the 47 different systems I'd nursed through every crisis imaginable. Then Ryan Maddox arrived. Picture every startup founder who'd ever given a TED Talk about disrupting the paradigm. Now imagine that person had failed 3 companies, burned through $20 million in VC money, and somehow convinced our board that his experience in scaling agile methodologies was exactly what a 15-year-old data infrastructure company needed. That was Ryan. He swept in on a Tuesday morning in his $200 sneakers and designer hoodie, gathering us in the main conference room for his vision casting session. I sat in the back, watching him pace in front of his slide deck like a caged predator who'd mistaken PowerPoint for actual power. Legacy thinking is killing this company, he announced, clicking to a slide showing a cemetery. Subtle. We need to pivot from maintenance mode to innovation mode, from defensive to offensive, from old school to new cool. I caught Marcus's eye across the room. He'd been here almost as long as me, managing the database architecture. He mouthed, "New cool?" And I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing. Ryan continued his performance, throwing around terms like technical debt restructuring and human capital optimization. It wasn't until slide 23 that the real message became clear. A new org chart appeared, streamlined and modern. The infrastructure team, my team, had been reduced from 12 people to 4. We're bringing in fresh talent, Ryan explained, his voice taking on that fake concerned tone executives use when they're about to destroy your life. People who understand modern DevOps, who think in terms of automation and efficiency rather than manual processes. Manual processes. I'd automated 90% of our deployment pipeline. I'd built the disaster recovery system that had saved us during the ransomware attack of 2019. I'd created the monitoring dashboards his predecessor had called mission critical just 6 months ago. But I kept my face neutral, fingers steady on my coffee cup. Let him talk. The individual meetings started that afternoon. One by one, my team was called into Ryan's office. He'd already commandeered the corner suite, naturally. Some emerged red-faced and shaking. Others looked stunned, clutching termination packages like life preservers. When my turn came, Ryan didn't even pretend to review my file. "Lena," he said, leaning back in his ergonomic chair, "you're obviously talented, but talent isn't enough anymore. We need people who speak the language of tomorrow, not yesterday." "What language is that?" I asked, genuinely curious what bullshit would come next. "Kubernetes, Terraform, GitOps, modern infrastructure as code." I almost laughed. I'd containerized our entire application stack 2 years ago. Our Terraform modules were my design, but Ryan had made up his mind before he'd ever learned my name. "I see," I said instead. He slid the termination package across his glass desk. 2 weeks severance per year of service. Healthcare continues for 3 months. We'll need your equipment and credentials by end of business Friday. I picked up the folder, flipped through it once. Standard corporate execution, clean and legal. "I'll need time to document the handover," I said. Ryan waved dismissively. "The new team starts Monday. I'm sure they'll figure it out. They're very experienced." That's when I smiled. My first genuine expression of the entire meeting. "Of course they are," I said, standing. "I'll make sure to leave everything exactly as it should be." Back at my desk, I began my final week at Northbridge Data Systems. I documented everything, Every system, every process, every critical function. But documentation, like infrastructure, is only as good as the person interpreting it. And sometimes, the most important details are the ones you leave out. The fresh talent arrived Wednesday morning like a swarm of locusts in hoodies and AirPods. Ryan introduced them as his Innovation Strike Team, refugees from a fintech startup that had burned through 30 million before discovering that blockchain couldn't actually solve world hunger. Their leader was Devin Hartley, a 28-year-old infrastructure architect whose LinkedIn profile read like a buzzword bingo card. He strutted into our workspace with the confidence of someone who'd never had to recover a corrupted database at 3 a.m. "So you're the legacy team," Devin announced, surveying our cube farm like a conquistador. "Don't worry, we're here to modernize everything, make it scalable, anti-fragile." "Anti-fragile," Marcus repeated flatly. "Right." Devin pulled up a chair next to my desk without asking. "Ryan says you've been here forever. That's cool, I guess. Must be nice having such job security." He smirked. "Well, until now." I kept typing, documenting our load balancer configuration. 7 years isn't forever. In tech years, it is. Things move fast now. Kubernetes, service mesh, GitOps. I bet half this stuff didn't even exist when you started. I wanted to tell him I'd deployed our first Kubernetes cluster before he'd graduated from his boot camp. Instead, I smiled. "You're absolutely right. I'm practically a dinosaur." He laughed, missing the ice in my voice. "So what exactly do you do here? Like, day-to-day?" "Oh, legacy stuff, keeping the lights on." I pulled up our architecture diagram, the simplified version I'd created for executives. "This is our current setup." Devin leaned in, squinting at the screen. "Wait, you're still running monoliths? And what's this, Apache? Seriously?" "Apache Kafka," I clarified. "For our event streaming, why not just use AWS Kinesis? Or better yet, we could rebuild this whole thing serverless. Lambda functions everywhere." I nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting idea. Of course, we process about 400 million events daily with sub-millisecond latency requirements, but I'm sure Lambda could handle that." "Exactly." He completely missed my sarcasm. "See, you just need to think bigger. This is why Ryan brought us in." The rest of his team was equally impressive. There was Brad, the DevOps evangelist, who insisted on calling every script a solution. Katie, who kept referring to our battle-tested PostgreSQL clusters as technical debt. And Raj, who spent his first day trying to convince everyone that MongoDB was the answer to problems we didn't have. They set up camp in the conference room, whiteboards covered in revolutionary ideas that would have been cutting edge in 2015. I watched them diagram our transformation while the actual systems hummed along in the background, oblivious to their impending renovation. "We need total transparency," Devin announced in Thursday's All Hands. "Lena, I'll need complete documentation on every system, every dependency, every single point of failure." "Of course," I agreed. I've been working on comprehensive documentation all week, and I had hundreds of pages detailing every configuration, every connection, every critical process, all written in perfect technical English with one small quirk. The variables I used were creative, legacy key. Store might refer to our certificate management system, or it might be a placeholder I'd forgotten to update. The function initialize like cluster dot like heartbeat was thoroughly documented. I just happened to omit that it needed to be called with specific parameters that weren't quite what you'd expect from the name. "This is incredible," Devin said, scrolling through my documentation Friday morning. "So detailed, although..." He frowned. "Some of these environment variables seem weird. Like, what's Midnight Guardian process?" "Oh, that's our automated backup verification system," I explained with a straight face. "It runs integrity checks on the overnight snapshots. Why not just call it backup checker or something?" I shrugged. "Legacy naming conventions. You know how it is. Feel free to refactor everything once you take over." He nodded eagerly, already imagining the Medium post he'd write about taming technical debt. We'll standardize everything, make it clean and intuitive. I'm sure you will, I said, saving my final document and closing my laptop. Well, that's everything. All the knowledge transfer you could possibly need. This is perfect, Devin beamed. We'll have this place revolutionized by Monday. I have no doubt, I replied, packing up my personal items. 7 years reduced to a cardboard box and a documentation repository that was 100% accurate and 100% useless without the context I was taking with me. Thursday afternoon, the shunning began. First, it was small things. My name disappeared from meeting invites. The weekly infrastructure review I'd run for 5 years suddenly rescheduled to a time when I'd already been marked out of office. The Slack channels went quiet, not dead, just suddenly private. I could see the message count climbing in channels I could no longer access. Marcus caught me in the break room, glancing around nervously. They locked you out of the deployment channel. I noticed. Devin says it's for security. Clean handoff, no interference. He poured coffee with shaking hands. Lena, they don't know what they're doing. Yesterday, Brad asked me why we have so many database replicas. He wanted to optimize by cutting them down to one primary and one backup. I stirred my coffee calmly. What did you tell him? I tried to explain about read replicas, geographic distribution, failover patterns. He just kept saying, seems like over-engineering, and making notes in his iPad. Marcus, I said quietly, you have 2 kids, a mortgage. Don't die on this hill. He left without another word. By Friday morning, I was a ghost. My Jenkins admin privileges gone. GitLab access revoked. The monitoring dashboards I'd built and maintained for years now required permissions I no longer had. Security best practice, Ryan explained when I asked about it. Devin's team needs a clean environment to work in, can't have multiple admins during a transition. The deployments I scheduled for tonight, Devin will handle them. He's very experienced with CI/CD. I almost asked if Devin knew that our Jenkins instance required a specific token rotation every 72 hours or the entire pipeline would lock. Almost. Instead, I sat at my desk and continued my documentation. If they wanted to cut me out, fine. But I still had local access to my own machines and muscle memory for every system we'd built. Brad appeared at my desk around noon, chest puffed out with fresh authority. Hey, so I've been reviewing your scripts, and honestly, most of this could be simplified. Like, why do you have all these health checks before deployments? Seems like technical debt. Those prevent deploying to unhealthy nodes, I explained patiently. Right. But how often are nodes actually unhealthy? Seems like premature optimization. He leaned against my desk, knocking over my coffee mug. Oops, sorry. Anyway, I'm thinking we just strip all that out, make the deployments faster. I watched coffee spread across my desk, seeping into papers I no longer needed. That's certainly one approach. Also, I noticed you have root access to the production servers. I'll need those credentials. Ryan wants all access centralized under the new team. Of course. I pulled up my password manager, copying the credentials into a secure file. Here's everything: root passwords, service accounts, API keys. Brad's eyes widened. Wow, there's hundreds of these. Welcome to enterprise infrastructure. He grabbed the file eagerly. This is perfect. Although, what's this note about temporal synchronization requirements? Oh, some of our services are sensitive to clock drift. The documentation covers it in detail. Cool. He was already distracted, probably imagining how he'd brag about managing hundreds of production systems at his next meetup. The final insult came at 4:47 p.m., an automated email from HR. Your access badge will be deactivated at 5 p.m. Please return it to security before leaving the building. 17 minutes to pack 7 years. I pulled up my terminal one last time. Everything was revoked, locked, transferred, except for one thing. A simple script I'd written years ago, back when I was paranoid about getting locked out during maintenance windows. A dead man's switch, we'd jokingly called it. It didn't destroy anything, didn't delete, corrupt, or sabotage. It simply stopped helping. Stopped the automatic corrections, the self-healing functions, the invisible hands that kept everything running. One command, 8 characters, enter. Goodbye. I closed my laptop, placed my badge on the desk, and picked up my cardboard box. Devin waved cheerfully from the conference room, already planning Monday's revolution. See you around, Lena. No, I said quietly, walking past. You won't. The elevator down from the 7th floor had never felt longer. 30 feet per floor, 210 feet total. Descending at 2 feet per second. I had 105 seconds to process 7 years dissolving into nothing. My phone buzzed. Marcus, they're already in the server room. Brad's taking photos for LinkedIn. I typed back, take care of yourself. Then I deleted his number. Clean breaks are kindest. In the lobby, security guard Thomas looked up from his desk. We'd exchanged pleasantries for 7 years. Complaints about weather, jokes about the coffee, discussions about his grandson's Little League games. Heading out early, Missy Cooper? Something like that. I slid my badge across the marble counter. Take care, Thomas. He frowned at the badge, then at me. Everything all right? Perfect, I said, and meant it. The January air hit like a slap. Boston in winter, brutal, honest, no pretense. I stood on the sidewalk, box under one arm, laptop bag over my shoulder, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just the crystalline clarity that comes when you've made a decision you can't take back. My phone rang. Ryan's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text. Lena, quick question about the deployment schedule. Call me back. I turned off read receipts and kept walking. The script I'd executed, my little goodbye gift, was elegant in its simplicity. Every system we ran had built-in redundancies, automatic failovers, self-healing mechanisms. I'd built them all, refined them through countless 3 a.m. emergencies, tuned them until they purred like well-fed cats. Now they were gone. Not deleted, that would be sabotage. Just retired. Every automated health check, every self-correction routine, every invisible guardian angel that kept our infrastructure from eating itself, they all relied on a heartbeat signal from a very specific process. A process that had just flatlined. The beauty was in what wouldn't happen. Certificates wouldn't auto-renew. Memory leaks wouldn't trigger restarts. Database connections wouldn't self-terminate when they hung. Log files wouldn't rotate. Disk space wouldn't get cleaned up. Death by 1,000 paper cuts, all of them self-inflicted. My car was parked 3 blocks away. I'd learned years ago to avoid the corporate garage on Fridays. Too many forced conversations with departing colleagues. I loaded my box in the trunk and sat in the driver's seat, engine off, watching Northbridge's glass tower in my rearview mirror. Another text from Ryan. Devin says some scripts aren't running. Did you change something? Then Devin. Hey, quick question about the Midnight Guardian process variable. What exactly does it do? I pulled out my personal laptop and opened a terminal. One more command to run, this one on my own infrastructure. A simple redirect that would forward all my Northbridge email to both dev, null. Digital cremation for a digital life. My phone buzzed insistently, Ryan calling again, then Devin, then a number I recognized as the knock. I turned off the phone and started the car. The drive home took 40 minutes through Friday traffic. I thought about the Jenkins build that would fail at 6 p.m. when the cert expired. The log aggregator that would stop aggregating when it hit the disk space limit around midnight. The load balancer that would keep routing traffic to dead nodes because the health checker wasn't marking them failed. Monday would be interesting. At home, I poured a glass of wine and stood on my back deck, looking out at the woods behind my house. 7 years of 60-hour weeks, of carrying a laptop everywhere, of interrupted vacations and canceled plans. 7 years of being the guardian of systems that ran millions in revenue through their digital veins. Cheers, I said to the empty air, raising my glass to the setting sun. Here's to fresh talent and innovation strike teams. I'd already updated my resume that morning, while my access was being revoked, already reached out to a few contacts. The market was hot for someone with my skills, my real skills, not the legacy thinking Ryan had dismissed. But first, I had a weekend to myself. A weekend where my phone would stay off, my laptop would stay closed, and Northbridge Data Systems would begin to learn what happens when you fire the person who's been manually keeping your automated systems automatic. I smiled, took another sip of wine, and went inside to pack for a trip. Somewhere with no cell service, somewhere quiet, somewhere I could pretend I couldn't hear the servers screaming. Monday, 6:47 a.m. I was pouring coffee at a lakeside cabin in New Hampshire when Northbridge Data Systems began its death spiral. Later, I'd pieced together the timeline from LinkedIn posts, Reddit threads, and one particularly detailed Hacker News comment from someone claiming to be close to the situation. But that morning, I just sat on the deck, watching mist rise off the lake, blissfully unaware that Devin Hartley was about to have the worst day of his professional life. It started small. The Jenkins build pipeline, scheduled to run at 6 a.m., failed with a cryptic SSL error. Devin, eager to prove his modern DevOps approach, tried to restart it. Access denied. The certificate had expired at 6 p.m. Friday, exactly as designed. No problem, he told Brad over Slack. We'll just generate a new cert. Except the certificate authority required authentication from the root certificate store, which required access to the HashiCorp vault, which required a token that rotated every 72 hours, which had expired Sunday night. By 7:30, the alert started cascading. The log aggregator, bloated with 3 days of unrotated logs, hit its disk space limit and crashed. Without centralized logging, the team couldn't see what was failing where. They were flying blind. Ryan arrived at 8:15 to find his innovation strike team in full panic mode. The customer-facing dashboard, his pride and joy. The first thing board members checked each morning showed nothing but error messages. What do you mean you can't access the servers? Ryan's voice, according to the Reddit thread, had climbed 2 octaves. The SSH keys are managed by the vault, Devin explained, and the vault is... Get Lena on the phone. She's not answering. Then figure it out. You're the experts. Brad suggested they try a hard reboot of the affected systems. This was like trying to fix a Swiss watch with a hammer. The PostgreSQL cluster, sensing an unclean shutdown, went into recovery mode. Without the automated health checks to guide the process, it stayed there. By 9 a.m., the CRM system was down. Sales couldn't access customer data. Support couldn't log tickets. The phone system, integrated with the now-dead CRM, defaulted to a busy signal. Katie finally found my disaster recovery documentation. Page 74, clearly labeled Emergency Vault Recovery Process. Step 1. Ensure Midnight Guardian. Process is running. Step 2. Authenticate using the root token stored in the secure enclave. Step 3. Execute recovery protocol using temporal synchronization key. What the hell is a temporal synchronization key? Devin shouted. Marcus, who'd been quietly watching the chaos, finally spoke up. It's in her documentation. Page 132. They flipped frantically to page 132. A single line. Temporal synchronization key. Contact Lena Cooper. The CloudWatch alarms were screaming now. Memory usage spiking on application servers, the automatic garbage collection wasn't running. Connection pools filling up, the dead connection reaper was gone. Disk space critical on 12 systems and climbing. Ryan made the call at 10 a.m., legal and HR on the line. We need her back, now. Whatever it takes. She destroyed our systems, Devin protested. This is sabotage. The general counsel's voice was ice cold over the speaker. Can you prove she did anything malicious, deleted anything, inserted malicious code? Well, no. But then what you're telling me is that your team of experts can't run systems that a single person managed for 7 years. The Kubernetes cluster chose that moment to join the party. Without the pod lifecycle manager keeping things tidy, defunct containers had been accumulating all weekend. The nodes, choking on zombie processes, started dropping like dominoes. By noon, Northbridge Data Systems was effectively offline. The status page, hosted on the same infrastructure because Devon had consolidated everything for efficiency, showed a cheerful green checkmark. Last updated Friday at 4:47 p.m. Twitter noticed. Tech reporters started asking questions. Customers started canceling contracts. Ryan's final call came at 12:30. My phone, powered off and tucked in my cabin's drawer, didn't even light up. The voicemail would wait until Tuesday. Lena, it's Ryan. We need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. Please call me back immediately. We're prepared to discuss compensation, significant compensation. Please. But I wasn't listening to voicemails. I was knee-deep in a mountain stream, fly rod in hand, demonstrating to the local trout that I was much better at managing servers than catching fish. The sun was warm. The water was cold. And somewhere in Boston, Devon Hartley was learning that legacy overhead and critical infrastructure were often the same thing. Tuesday morning, I finally turned on my phone. 47 missed calls, 186 text messages, 89 emails forwarded from my personal account before the redirect caught up. The latest voicemail was from someone I didn't expect. Patricia Winters, CEO of the parent company. Her voice was professionally calm, the way executors sound at will readings. Ms. Cooper, I need to speak with you urgently about the situation at Northbridge. Please call me directly. She left her personal cell number. I deleted it and went back to my coffee. The text painted a beautiful picture of corporate collapse. Ryan's messages evolved from demanding to pleading to barely coherent. Devon started technical and ended with, please help. Brad had sent 30 variations of, hey, quick question. But the most interesting message was from Marcus. They're gone. All of them. Board meeting at 6 a.m. Ryan resigned by 6:15. Devon's team terminated for gross incompetence, stock down 12%. Katie cried. Brad threatened to sue until legal reminded him about his NDA. Thought you should know. P.S. I still have a job. Thanks for the advice. I pulled up the news on my laptop. Northbridge Data Systems suffers major outage. CEO departs. The article was carefully worded, all corporate speak and vague assertions. But the Reddit comments filled in the gaps. Heard from inside, they fired their entire infrastructure team Friday and replaced them with some crypto bros. Servers died Monday morning. Complete shit show. My company was a client. 18 hours of downtime and counting. We're pulling our contract. Yo, classic MBA brain. Fire the people who know how things work to save 15% on salaries, lose 500% in revenue. Patricia called again while I was reading. This time I answered. Ms. Cooper. No pleasantries. I'll be direct. We need you back. Name your price. I'm retired. You're 35. I'm fishing. A pause. The board has authorized me to offer you a consulting contract. $2,000 per hour, minimum 40 hours. Not interested. $3,000. Ms. Winters? With all due respect, your company decided I was legacy overhead. I'm just respecting that decision. Ryan Maddox was an idiot. The board knows that now. The board hired him. Another pause. What do you want, Lena? I thought about it, watching an eagle circle over the lake. I want Devon's team to figure it out. They're the experts. After all, the innovators, the fresh talent. They can't. They've admitted they can't. Your documentation. They say it's incomplete. My documentation is perfectly complete. Every system, every process, every configuration. It's all there. Then why? Because documentation isn't knowledge, Patricia. It's just information. Your boy Ryan never understood the difference. I heard papers shuffling, murmured conversation in the background. The general counsel says we may have grounds for legal action. Sabotage? Good luck with that. I took another sip of coffee. I documented everything before I left. I transitioned all access. I even wrote detailed handover notes. If your team of experienced professionals can't figure out how to run systems from comprehensive documentation, that's not sabotage, that's incompetence. You did something. The systems were fine Friday. I ran scheduled maintenance tasks. I monitored performance. I prevented problems before they happened. I did my job. Patricia. Then you decided you didn't need me to do it anymore. The legal threats evaporated. Her voice shifted, still professional, but tired now. The downtime has cost us $8 million so far. We've lost 3 major clients. The board is considering replacing the entire C-suite. Sounds like a leadership problem. Lena. Patricia, let me explain something. Every system has 2 layers, what it does and how it stays doing it. Your innovation strike team understood the first layer. They looked at our infrastructure and saw applications running, data flowing, services responding. They thought that was the whole picture. But it wasn't. No. The second layer is all the small things. The cron job that cleans up temp files before they eat your disk space. The script that restarts services with memory leaks before they crash. The monitoring that catches problems at 2% degradation instead of 100% failure. That's not documented in runbooks because it's not process. It's intuition built on years of experience. Come back, please. As CTO, full autonomy. Your own budget. I laughed. A real laugh, not bitter, just amused. No. Then we're dead. No, you're learning. There's a difference. I stood up, stretching. Call Marcus Chen. Promote him to interim head of infrastructure. Give him hiring authority and a 50% raise. He knows enough to stabilize things. He wasn't senior. Neither was I. Until I was. Goodbye. Patricia. I hung up and turned the phone off again. Somewhere in Boston, a very expensive lesson in the difference between cost and value was reaching its conclusion. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a small coffee shop in Portland, interviewing with the founder of a cybersecurity startup. No glass towers, no innovation strike teams, just a small company that understood the value of people who keep systems running. Your references are interesting. Sarah, the founder, said with a wry smile. Marcus Chen practically wrote you a love letter. Patricia Winters said, and I quote, hiring Lena Cooper would be the smartest decision you'll ever make. Not hiring her might be your last. Patricia's prone to dramatics. Is she wrong? I shrugged. Depends on how you treat your infrastructure team. Sarah leaned back. Look, we're small. 40 people. Series B, actual revenue. We can't match big corporate salaries. I'm not looking for big corporate anything. But we can offer equity, flexible hours, and a promise. We don't fire people for being essential. When do I start? That evening, I got one last message from Northbridge. Not from Ryan. He'd gone dark after his resignation, probably updating his LinkedIn to read, seeking new opportunities in transformational leadership. Not from Devin. Rumor had it he'd gone back to crypto, where moving fast and breaking things was considered a feature. It was from Thomas, the security guard. Ms. Cooper found something in the lobby lost and found. Small package with your name on it. Should I forward it? Curious, I gave him my Portland address. The package arrived 3 days later. Inside was a Pelican case, waterproof and lockproof. The combination was already set to my birthday. Marcus's touch, clearly. Inside, nestled in foam like precious artifacts, were 3 items. A USB drive labeled "The Real Documentation" in Marcus's handwriting. A bottle of 18-year scotch with a note. For the person who taught me that uptime isn't about the systems. It's about the people who run them. Your grateful successor. And a printed screenshot of Northbridge's status page, showing 99.97% uptime, my lifetime average over 7 years. At the bottom, someone had written, "Never beaten, never will be." I smiled and closed the case. Somewhere in Boston, Marcus was probably dealing with his own Devon, his own Ryan, his own corporate antibodies rejecting the medicine they desperately needed. But he'd learned the important lesson: document everything, trust no one, and always keep a backup of your backups. My new job started Monday. Smaller company, smaller systems, smaller headaches, but also smaller egos, smaller politics. And a CEO who understood that infrastructure wasn't cost, it was value. The fishing had been good in New Hampshire, peaceful, quiet, empty. But I had to admit, I missed the gentle hum of healthy servers. The satisfaction of 2 a.m. fixes that no one would ever know about. The quiet pride of systems so stable, they became invisible. Ryan had been wrong about one thing in particular. I wasn't legacy overhead. I was institutional memory. The difference between documentation and knowledge, the gap between best practices and what actually works. He'd called me replaceable. And technically, he was right. They'd replaced me with an entire team. It just turned out that an entire team of the wrong people couldn't do the job of one person who gave a damn. Late that night, I opened my laptop and checked the tech news one last time. Northbridge had stabilized under Marcus's leadership, but the damage was done. Stock down 30%. CEO search ongoing. Cultural transformation underway. I raised my coffee mug in a quiet toast. To Marcus, inheriting the kingdom of duct tape and determination I'd built. To Thomas, still checking the lost and found. To systems everywhere, silently screaming for someone who speaks their language. And to Ryan Maddox, who taught the tech world a valuable lesson. The most expensive hire you'll ever make is the one who convinces you to fire the people who keep your business running. I closed the laptop and went to bed. Tomorrow, new servers to meet, new systems to learn, new fires to prevent before they started. But tonight, I slept the deep sleep of someone who'd proved a point without throwing a single punch. They fired me Friday at 5 p.m. By Monday, they understood why that was the most expensive decision they'd ever made. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If you enjoyed this tale of corporate karma, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts about office justice. Have you ever witnessed a company learn the hard way about valuing their essential people? Let me know in the comments.